This is the gwolves lightweight clay, a very interesting accessory gwolves sells and includes with their mice, which is designed to be a modification tool, so to speak, where you can mold the clay into shape-altering attachments for your mouse to make the mouse's shape more comfortable for your hand size and improve its ergonomics. Now, commonly, this is best used on gwolves' smaller mice like the hti-r, hsk, or Fenrir series of mice, but this clay actually has a lot of alternative uses even on more normal shell shapes, and seeing as not a lot of people talk about this clay too much, I figured now would be a good time as any to make a guide on how to properly use this lightweight clay and also bring more attention to it as it is a very underrated accessory. Now, if you want to follow along with this video, you'll obviously need a few packs of the lightweight clay. If you're going to make smaller modifications for your mouse, you only need a pack or two, but for larger modification pieces, I'd advise getting 4 or more packs. You also need some adhesive, either double-sided tape or super glue to adhere the clay to the mouse's shell, and depending on what modifications you plan on making, some adhesive types will be better or worse, and we'll go over the best use cases for the adhesive later in this video. But before we get into it, if you enjoy the guide and want to see more reviews like this, be sure to leave a like on this video and get subscribed to the channel. And if you want to support what I do here on the channel, consider becoming a channel member here on YouTube. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Now, before you crack open the clay packets, take a moment and decide what modification shapes you want to create for your mouse. So for example, think of how you want to shape a height-altering palm attachment, or maybe how you'd shape a finger ridge or a finger grip. I would highly recommend using a pen and paper and sketching out the rough outlines of what you want to create so you can reference your ideas as you form the clay pieces. Also keep in mind, since the clay is kind of sticky when uncured, be sure to wash your hands before you mold your shapes, and we do recommend forming the clay in a clean, well-ventilated environment to prevent airborne debris from getting trapped in the clay while you're shaping it. But once you've decided on what kind of modification shapes you want to create for your mouse, crack open your pack of clay and take a portion of it and roll it in your hands. Now, I wouldn't recommend using the entire packet as less is more with this clay, so try using the smallest amount possible to create your shapes and add more as needed. Now, if you're going to create finger rests or ridges, you can simply make circles or kind of oval-like shapes, and once formed, press your finger into them to create these grips. You can also use a credit card to help mold these shapes as well. And if you're going to create a height-altering attachment such as a hump attachment for your mouse, I'd recommend making a large half-spherical shape and gently molding it as needed to the mouse's shell. But what I'm doing here is just kind of a guideline, and you don't have to create one-for-one shapes of what I'm making here. There are essentially limited options with this lightweight clay, so I'd highly recommend experimenting and finding what shapes work for your grip style. But once you've created your desired shapes, go ahead and test them on your mouse's shell and see if they work as intended, but don't fully press the foam against the mouse's shell just yet, as if adhered to the shell, the clay can tear or deform when removed, so gently test the shapes and if needed, modify them. Also keep in mind that your shapes might interfere with side buttons or main clicks, so be sure to remove any material that might interfere with the mouse's operation. You can do this after the clay is cured, but it's easier to do it now. And once you're satisfied with the shapes you've created, if there's smaller pieces, you can gently remove them from the mouse and place them on a plate, a sheet of tinfoil, or wax paper, and place them in a well-ventilated environment and let the clay cure for approximately 2 days, and make sure not to disturb the clay during this time, as you can warp the clay if it's disturbed during its curing process. If you're creating a larger shape such as a hump modifier for a mouse's rear shell, I'd recommend leaving the clay on the mouse's shell and let it cure with the mouse's support, as if it's removed and it's a very large piece, gravity could cause the clay to deform without the shell support. Alright, and all you have to do now is let your clay cure, so go ahead and leave it for 2 days and come back when everything is hardened. Alright, and once your clay pieces are cured, go ahead and test the fit of the pieces again to make sure they fit as expected, and if needed, you can further trim or sculpt the shape with a box cutter or a similar tool, and again, make sure your shapes don't interfere with the mouse's main or side clicks. And once you've checked the clay's compatibility and everything is good, you can go ahead and install the clay onto your mouse, and there are 2 ways of doing so, either attaching it with double-sided tape or adhesive, or using very small dots of super glue dotted onto the clay itself or the shell with the edge of a toothpick. You can of course use other adhesive types if desired. Now, the double-sided tape is the easiest you can do, as you can buy sheets of this double-sided adhesive from Amazon and just cut pieces the same size as your clay, and this method has the added benefit of being removable, so if the clay starts to discolor or deteriorate over use, you can easily replace it and the adhesive, while the super glue is the more permanent option, and while you still can remove the clay, there will still be tiny dots of super glue left on your mouse's shell, and because of this, I would recommend just getting the double-sided adhesive and cutting shapes as needed, as it's a little easier to remove the double-sided adhesive from the shell than the super glue. But whatever method of adhesive you use, once the adhesive is applied to the shell or the clay, you can attach the clay to the mouse's shell, and that's all you need to do to form and apply your clay shape modifiers to your mouse. Alright, and in terms of the performance for the clay shapes, obviously since it alters the shape of the mouse, it can significantly improve the ergonomics of a mouse's shell, specifically smaller ones, and the cured clay does have a soft matte-like texturing to it which is decently grippable, but if you dislike the feeling of the clay, you can always flatten the surface with a box cutter and install grip tape onto the surface of the clay to make it even more grippable. But one great thing about this clay specifically is that it's very light in weight, so even if you make very large clay pieces for a mouse, it won't add significant amounts of weight to the mouse, nor will it unbalance it in most use cases. But one downside to this clay is that it does discolor over long-term use due to its white color, so over long-term use you'll likely need to replace your clay modifications at some point, which again will be much easier if you use double-sided tape to anchor the clay to your mouse rather than super glue, so again keep this in mind when you're creating and installing your clay modifications. And as I said earlier, there are essentially infinite use cases for this lightweight clay, so feel free to experiment with different shapes and styles of clay modifiers. You can even make bigger shapes that hang off the side of the mouse and attach skates to the clay's base to widen shells, so experiment and see what you can make with the gwolves lightweight clay. Alright, and with that is how you properly use, form, and install the gwolves lightweight clay. And as I said at the top of the video, this lightweight clay is super underrated and has a lot of very interesting use cases as I showed in this video, as you can make mice that aren't comfortable for your hand sizes much more comfortable with some well-designed pieces of clay attached to the shell. And if you don't own any of gwolves lightweight clay, don't worry, you don't need to purchase a gwolves mouse to get some. You can order the lightweight clay package directly from gwolves website, so if you're interested in trying out the lightweight clay, I'll have the product page linked down in the video description for you. But with that, that's everything for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and get subscribed to the channel, and if you'd like to support what I do here on the channel with the in-depth reviews of the Teardown Project and guides like this, consider becoming a channel member. But that's all for today, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Peace.